Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Tom Stewart here, Smart Business Moves. We're with Chris Schwab today. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Hey, it's great to see you two again.
You too, Chris.
Liz, how are things going on the West Coast?
Pretty good. Still in lockdown. Yeah, yes. We're so lucky.
You've got the world covered. Chris, you're in London today, right?
Yep, over here in London. Chilly, but not too bad.
And you're locked down too.
Yeah.
I'm in South Carolina. We don't believe in such things in South Carolina. When we say we, I'm speaking for the government here. Individually, we have different opinions, but it's wide open here.
Hey, Denise. Yeah, see, Denise wants the scoop too. So, Chris, you have to share what you just shared with us about the Christmas thing.
Yeah, it really is ridiculous, isn't it? So, yeah, the UK has been in kind of lockdown. They've been going, they had 3 different tiers, and then they do this month-long lockdown, and we're just coming out of this next week. But a lot of us are talking here. It kind of feels like the government is punishing us in a way, because essentially they said that this is the UK government's official position. Every day over Christmas that you spend with your family, you'll have to do 5 days in lockdown. So they're giving us a 5-day period to get together with family. How gracious of them. And then we're going to spend the next month essentially in lockdown again, isolating, because apparently family are, harbingers of chaos and death. But so that's the thing.
So I can see quarantine for whatever the incubation period is perceived to be, and I saw that the CDC now in the U.S. is thinking about taking the 14-day period and bumping it down to maybe as low as 7. So I guess they're figuring out that it doesn't take 14 days for the COVID SARS-CoV-2 virus to make one sick. But the 5 days for every day you're together, how do they explain that?
I don't know how they come up with these things, but I really don't.
There's people in your press conferences. People are asking, your prime minister and other, leaders. Why are you doing this? Don't they have to give a rational answer?
I have a pet theory. It's probably wrong, but it's more fun.
I like it.
The UK, like the media, the magazines, the government, like for decades, we're kind of known for being kind of snarky with our humor, and we love taglines and catchphrases. And so anytime there's like a snazzy way or a catchy way to do something, like to say something or phrase something, they'll do it. So I feel like they just said 5 days for every 1 day. Like they came up with like some slogan that sounded good internally with their ministers, and they like burned the pile of science papers, and they ignored the scientific committee, and they said, hey, this slogan sounds catchy, let's go with this. Like I feel like that's how they've been handling this. Like,
people will remember this. This is good.
But it's not a rumor, it's real. I mean, it's law. It's regular.
Oh yeah. I'm not allowed to leave my own country. It's illegal for me to leave unless it's for work or an emergency. Like they actually, until December 2nd, they said you're not allowed to leave your own country. So it's a real lockdown. It's pretty extreme.
We've got a lot to cover today, but I can't let this go. How do they know how many days you spent together with your family at Christmas?
That was my question. Thank you, Tom.
It's a great one. I don't know. There is the contact tracing program, which I think is a little more, what would you say? Like, I don't want to say effective isn't the right word. All encompassing. They're much more careful. So here we have a contact tracing program. If you go to the hairdressers or you go to the gym, you have to write down your name and address and phone number. Or if you go to a restaurant right now, so they always know where you individually have been. And then they cross-reference that with other people in the country, and they can check your location. So I haven't had any phone calls or emails from anyone that I've been breaking anything, but they have a program in place. So I don't know the specifics of how they actually enforce it, but they're definitely collecting the information so they know who is together when.
You're writing it down like there's a clipboard there that you put your name. I mean,
oh yeah, there's an actual clipboard with a pen, and you write down like yeah. Like I went to a restaurant with a friend a few weeks ago, and you had to write down your name and your address and your phone number, and that's sent to the government, and so then they know you went to that restaurant on this time at this date.
So if people come to your house, if you have family members to your house over Christmas, are you going to have a clipboard where they sign in for how many days they were there, and do you send it to the government? Or?
I have no idea. So I'm living alone right now. My brother's up with his partner, so I haven't had to do anything. I've kind of slipped under the radar. I'll send you guys a picture after, and then we'll leave it there. But there's a really terrifying picture if you ever read 1984. In the UK, on our buses and on some lampposts, there's an actual Orwellian poster that says "We're watching you," and it's a picture of two big eyes and a binocular. And I took a picture on my phone because I started seeing it everywhere in the city, and it's just like
is it satire, or is it something that the government actually put on the bus?
Oh no, it's our local police department.
Oh dear Lord.
Yeah, I'll send it to you after. It's really awful.
I mean, that was kind of fun, Chris. I think we need to bring you on like just once every couple of weeks so you can update us and make me laugh.
This is crazy. You know, well,
the degradation of our society by Chris Schwab. Yeah, I'll give you the updates every 2 weeks over here.
Perry Tate's been on our show a few times, and he lives in China, and he's kind of shared with us how it works there. And there is no currency, there's no credit cards, there's nothing. You can't go anywhere without your phone, and they track you on your phone. And if you come in contact with somebody with COVID, your screen on your phone goes from green to red, which means you have to, sequester yourself. But, they don't have clipboards and writing stuff down. There's technology. I'm confused.
I mean, I feel like that's just a really tough system because, like, what if you run out of ink? Like, I'm sorry. I didn't have a pen. So
this is what I mean, though. It's not thought out. They just arbitrarily throw requirements out. It's
somebody spills their coffee on the clipboard, and you have a super spreader event. I mean, just think of all the things that could go wrong.
This is.
I like what Leslie says. Could you lie? Like, it's so confusing. It's like, do they just trust that everybody tells the truth, or okay. Crazy.
Real quick, Liz, let's just balance and talk about what we're doing for the balance of the week, which is really kind of short because we're going to be down Thursday for Thanksgiving. What are we doing tomorrow, Liz?
Tomorrow we're going to have Lauren Folks Adams on. She runs Guarantee Maids in Louisiana. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, I believe so. Outside of New Orleans.
Yeah, outside of New Orleans. And she runs it. It's a family-run business, and they run on goals over there, y'all. And so she's going to share about how they engage all of their team members through the setting and achieving of their different goals. It should be really interesting.
And that'll be tomorrow, and we're off Thursday, and we'll be back at it again Monday, and hopefully we'll have our legs back under us after being off last week.
Yeah.
Feels weird.
Thanksgiving for you guys.
I had a heck of a time being like out of the loop last week with convention and my daughter here. So I hope I can make it till Monday. Hold on here.
We have faith. So Chris, we wanted to talk about, there were a couple of things the last time you were here that maybe are related, but are certainly relevant in the bigger picture. One was finding the right person to be, that support staff, the leadership that you'd be able to delegate to. And the other part of it, which was kind of a risk that I never really considered, but you mentioned it, it makes a lot of sense, is once you kind of unplug, you get your system in place, and you got your people that are doing the things you want to do, and you kind of back off. Sometimes it's kind of hard to put back in when you need to. So how do you manage that? So we can take either one of those topics in any order, and you can, if there's any other blanks that we need to fill in, you're you're driving. So
Yeah,
where should we
you
take
take us. I really like the way you present information, Chris. For my brain, it works really well. It feels very orderly and very easy to digest. So yes, please lead us, oh wise one. Very
Thank you.
young, wise one.
So just on a side note, I do have the guide I promised you guys. I just figured I'd wait to include this tonight's one as well, so I could send you a complete one, since it's kind of a little trilogy we've done here. So coming shortly. Yeah, I guess probably the easiest place is just to talk about maybe hiring the right person, and that'll naturally lead then to you're in a place where you can actually become too disconnected, right? Because they're the right person. So and then we can talk a little bit about communication styles if you wanted. It ties in a little bit to the right person. So I know you want to touch on that. Cool. I guess with that said, I'll enter presentation mode. So I think the biggest first thing, just for anyone watching, I'm going to use the term VA just because I run a VA agency. But when I say VA, it's really synonymous with office manager. Virtual assistants for cleaning companies are pretty much exactly the same as office manager, and 100% of what I'm going to say applies to both of those job titles. So I know one person is in the office and one person's on their laptop, but please, the principles apply. So I'd say the first one is to decide really what type of VA or office manager you actually need. So there's really dozens and dozens of types of VAs at this point. It is a new field relatively, but it has been around 20 to 25 years now. So it is new, but only as new as the internet itself is. There's data entry VAs, there's sales VAs, there's Amazon e-commerce VAs. What I'm going to focus on is administrative VAs, because I think that's what most of us need. Administrative or sales, if you find a unicorn and they're good at both, never let them go. But administrative VAs is what most of us are going to need. But I preface that just because you need to know the type of VA. Because if you pick up the wrong one, they may say they can do the work, but if they don't have the prior experience, you're going to be training someone way more than you actually need to, and you're not going to be standing next to them doing it. So it's no different than an office manager. Just be clear on the type of person that you need. So for us, that's someone who has prior experience in an office. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it should be at least 3 to 5 years. For us personally, that's the minimum that we'll accept someone who's led people in an office, who's been on the phone, who's either been a receptionist or been in line to answer the phone, someone who has experience reaching out and following up, and someone who is able to be independent. So I mentioned the last one because we're going to return to that in a little bit. Everyone, when you ask them, if you say, are you independent? Pretty much 100% of people will say yes, but a huge amount of people are not good at being independent. So we'll return that a little bit later, but that is a specific requirement that you're going to see pop up, especially if it's a virtual worker. They're just going to have to be incredibly on the ball without you there. So the first one is really...
Hold on real quick. Let me interrupt here real quick, Chris. Can we get the name of your company again? Let's put that over there in the chat, because some people are really going to want that information, looking it up while we're chatting.
Sure. I'm terrible at name dropping myself. So it's Innova Local. That's INOVA Local. You guys are welcome to check us out. It's a really basic site, but we're here to help. We're here to answer any questions, and you can just reach out to me on Facebook as well.
I just dropped the link in chat, and this idea of being independent, I'm sure it's going to be really, really important in our discussion from here forward, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. When you ask somebody, are they independent? Can they work independently? How you define that?
So two things there. If I could put it off for a couple minutes, because I'm about to jump back to it, or is that okay? I don't mean to deflect. So because it's coming right back in 30 seconds. The next step is deciding if you want to work with an agency or with an independent person, right? So if you're going to work with an agency, it's a lot more expensive, like we all know, but there is some huge advantages to working with an agency. And this is not this is not me talking about my own company right now, because I know that that would be convenient. But right, it was not alluded to that. But we have found that when you work with an agency, there's a certain minimum level of quality that you get. They may not even be that great, but there's a certain minimum that someone working for an agency has that you can then work with them on, that is not present when you're working with an independent person, because you're the one doing the job description and application. You're the one sifting through that. You're the one doing the interview, the training, right? There's a lot of that initial stuff that you've never done before, and you might not be able to find the first or the second or the third or the fifth person. All those people might not actually work out because you've never done this before yourself. And so sometimes for your first VA, it's actually better to spend more money and to go with an agency, because it allows you to try different VAs out. It allows you to see what type of communication style works for you, and it allows you to see how you can run your company remotely, or even if you're on the ground, how you can delegate entire parts of your company away and know that there's an agency there to fix any screw ups. So I actually recommend people go with an agency for their first VA often, just because there's an extra layer of security and accountability there before you go abroad. So
yeah, it's kind of funny because in some regards there's a parallel with what most of the people, you know, on this show are doing, because we're running house cleaning businesses and we're reaching out to consumers, trying to convince them that they'd be better off working with a company or an agency as opposed to just hiring an individual to clean their home. Presumably, if we're doing our jobs, not presumably, if we're doing our jobs the way they were supposed to, there's a value add. We're doing things that make hiring a company more valuable than just going out looking for an individual. So, you know, I'm sure the same thing works when your company is looking for VA, maybe even more so. Could you argue it's a more, you know, complicated task than, I mean, I would think it would be.
Yeah, I mean, if you've already got, you know, if you already have a team in place, you can probably just get an independent VA, because you have other people who can spend time with them and train them. And if for whatever reason, if the VA disappears or can't work, you have other people who can take up the slack. But if you're doing $15,000 a month in revenue, you're small, you're new, you've never had a team in place before, and you're doing everything, it's worth the extra $200 a month to have an agency there the first 6 months or year or whatever, and then you can move on when you're ready.
Absolutely. I think that to me, that seems like a no-brainer, that you got to go with an agency to find out what to cut the learning curve. Otherwise, how long is it going to take, and how much money are you really going to spend making all of the wrong choices and learning all of those mistakes the hard way? It just doesn't make sense to me at all.
Well, this is the thing. It's a sad thing in this industry, but it's true. So I will say it. There is a trend that a lot of independent VAs, unfortunately, will just accept any job, but they're not suited for it. But they're very good at selling themselves. I don't mean that in a bad way, but selling themselves online. And they either disappear on you after a few weeks because they found someone paying $1 an hour more, or they tell you that they're doing the work, but they're not, and you're not tracking it because you've trusted them a little too much at the start. If those situations happen with an independent VA, you're just screwed. But if it happens with an agency, you can light a fire under their ass and you can say, hey, what is this? You know, what did you give me? It's just that accountability is just super important. So to answer your question, Tom, I define independent as someone who is able to have an initial period of training, whether that's 4, 6, or 12 weeks. That's a fairly normal time that you're transitioning people in. They're able to have a normal period of training, but after that, they'd be able to handle every area of the business that you've assigned them, except for emergencies without your input. That's what an independent person really is to me. If you mean that in the context of an interview, I can also talk about that. But that's, to me, someone who's independent is able to handle any task that you assign them with the understanding that that's where their strengths are, without actually having to get you involved on a regular basis. So if they're having to get you involved 5 times a day, that's not very independent.
Right. If you ask somebody in an interview, are they independent? I'm sure they're going to be telling you yes. We all, was it 80% of the population thinks they're better than average. So, they're going to answer it yes. But
So I'll tell you what I do. It's a little mean, but it's not mean, but it's pressure. So I'm traveling between 3 countries all the time, and I'll just give them different scenarios. I'll be like, hey, my cleaning business is in DC, and you're going to be running it from 9 to 5, but I might be in Tokyo or London. What do you do if I've left my briefcase in Tokyo and I'm in the airport? How would you get that to me? Like, I'll give them really hard scenarios, and I'll just see what their reply is. And if their first instinct is to come to you and say, "Oh, I'll contact you first to see what you'd like me to do," that's not independent. That's coming to me with my problem that I gave to you, right? So
Right.
I'll give them a tough scenario that I had recently, and then I'll just see what their response is. And anytime their first response is to check in with me, I understand that's what people want to hear. Like, they'll check in with me to make sure that they're doing it right. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear what they're going to do on their own. So giving them different scenarios in the interview rather than just a simple question like, are you independent, is I think a better way to suss out if they are.
Absolutely.
I guess a corollary with being independent, though, is being competent, because it's like, well, I'm not going to ask you, but I might do something. My solution might not be very good either. So, I mean, being independent but not being competent is obviously not a good solution either. Because sometimes given the choice of, their solution might be so bad, it would be like, well, gee, I'd rather for you not to be so independent under a situation like that, because your solution might be really bad.
I do have to say, though, Tom, that is coming from somebody with the mindset of working in the business. And so, from Chris's position, he needs people that, even if their decisions are not great, that they're willing to, the first thing needs to be that they're independent. He feels, I think that from what he said last time was, he believes that he can teach them how to make better decisions, but he can't teach them to take on the role of making the decisions. That's harder. Finding that person that's independent and teaching them how to do it better is easier.
It's almost independent is almost like a character trait. It's a behavior that it's either there or it's not, I guess.
Yeah, that was very well put. I think I'm not trying to teach someone a different mindset, because that's down to them. It's not down to me if they're going to change their mindset. But the fact that they are independent, whether they're actually making good decisions or not at first, is more important, because I feel that I'm comfortable letting people screw up even fairly majorly once or twice, and then walking through that screw up with them so they don't do it again.
Plus, you do a really good job of helping people understand what the parameters are. There are a set of circumstances where, from I remember prior discussion, where you'll say that they need to get you involved.
Right. Yeah. And we have a list of those, a slowly budding list. I mean, it's just a Word document. It's not anything glorious, but we have some pointers where we go through with new office managers kind of worst case scenarios, and we say it's probably good to get the owner involved here. Yeah. But honestly, my advice here is really let them screw up. Like, if they're screwing up 3 times a day for like 6 months, there's a limit, but they're new to your company. They don't know you. They don't know what's in your brain and how you think. So they don't know exactly the way you like to do things. So let them screw up on each task a couple times. And if there's a genuine improvement from week to week, you've got a great person willing to improve. So, yeah. I mean, that's huge on its own. I would say that's a big one. The other big one that's kind of like the last of the big ones, I would say, before things like job applications is international versus US. It's a big debate these days in the VA world, and I guess less in the office manager world. Most office managers are based in the US, but you have to decide if you want an international or US VA. In terms of the quality of the worker, there isn't much of a quality difference, but there are a couple important things that do actually affect local business owners. I'll give you an example. When we first started my VA agency, we brought on several international VAs, but they were every bit as good in terms of the quality of their work, their response, their output, the stability of their internet. They were good workers. But we had a lot of people, clients of ours, specify that they needed someone with an American accent. Not because the owner cared so much, but they said that the customers often found it difficult to understand. And we've even had it within the US as well, where we've had people from the East Coast unsuitable for working with someone on the West Coast, right? Or the South. So it's even interregional, where accent differences can play a huge part. If you've ever been to Scotland and England, people in England almost can't understand people from Scotland. Like it's almost a different variant of English. And so if you call a business in London and a Scottish guy answers with a really heavy Scottish accent, you're almost screwed, you know?
Yeah.
So
we did run into this a little bit with our West Coast versus East Coast, or Southern too.
Southern accent answering the phones for people on the West Coast didn't get great outcomes. Like
No.
the perception was that people with a Southern accent aren't very smart.
They're dim. They're dim.
Yes.
It's like embarrassing to even be on the West Coast and know that, but it is. People that talk slower, there must not just be as smart. It's like embarrassing them that people think that, but it's a thing. So we had a little trouble. So I can relate to that. Okay.
Just a different pace of life, you know?
Yeah. Right. So language does matter. That's one of the very first considerations.
I do.
Like a biggie.
I don't mention that to dampen anyone's spirit. Of course, going international is cheaper, but you may find it's not cheaper if people are having difficulty booking, you know? So that's not it's not a situation you want to be in where you've brought a really good person on and then they're actually turning out to be ineffective because of something as basic as language. So it's just something to look out for. The only other big thing is there are a lot more, you can find great international VAs with the internet, but the problem is country infrastructure can often be a problem. With the Philippines, this is a huge issue with earthquakes, with natural events. Internet outages are huge. So software and infrastructure can be a problem in some countries. So it's just what it is. But it's not a huge one, but it's something you need to think about. And if you're unsure, this is one case where you should default to the more expensive option. A US-based agency VA will be 2 or 3 times as expensive, but you will have a consistency of quality that you need.
Okay. You know, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it could be valuable information to our audience as well. As you know, a lot of what we're talking about here is like office manager or sales. This is part of the normal everyday production process, but I also know that, cleaning businesses oftentimes are looking for help doing graphic design or website work or project related work. Any advice in terms of looking at international talent for those types of activities? If the internet goes down, great. I get my design, tomorrow as opposed to today. I mean, some of those challenges might not be as big an issue depending upon what it is that you've got people doing for you.
So you're really just wondering for other types of projects where language is less of a barrier.
Less of a barrier, and the time difference, and even the technology in terms of are there animals in the background when they're on the telephone, for instance. Well, if they're doing graphic design for you, it really doesn't matter, Or
This is a good question, actually, because it kind of drifts a little bit into communication styles. This is have you heard of asynchronous and synchronous communication?
From a technology standpoint, yes.
Yeah, so you can kind of apply that to communication as well. With people. So asynchronous is kind of non-real time, and synchronous is real time. Just for references with people. So over email or team announcements or high-level planning or kind of one-directional feedback, that's all asynchronous communication. Synchronous would be a team meeting together, a daily check-in or training where you're actually together communicating at the same time in real time. So for your question, for asynchronous, not real-time communication and tasks like web design, like SEO, international is completely fine, and you'll find very good quality workers able to do work at a cheaper rate. It's really not an issue. It's only really an issue when you get into synchronous real-time communication. That's when international US becomes a big deal. So I don't think you would see any real dip in quality, provided you find a quality provider. If you use the criteria for a US-based quality provider on an international person for things like web design, I don't think you would see a quality difference.
That's a good analogy. I love that. If you're looking for somebody to be your office manager, do your sales, those are synchronous activities. They need to be there at the time that the work is being performed.
Right, and there's just kind of one other mini situation that does make a difference is things like weather. If you have a US-based VA, they're generally often in the same time zone as you, in the same general area. Maybe not the same state, but kind of the same general area. So they're going to understand if there's weather difficulties. If you have a VA from the Philippines answering your phone in DC and there's heavy snow in DC and they're booking your teams for a bunch of queens that they can't get to because of the snow, your VA is not going to know that, right? Unless they check the weather every day, which would be a good thing to do. But they wouldn't know, whereas someone in the US would know that difficulty is there. They'd know things like not to book teams on Thanksgiving because you're closed. They'd have those little cultural details and insights that actually turn out to be fairly important. So that's something you'd be missing as well, which is no one's fault. It's just what it is.
Yeah. Things you might not think to tell because everybody knows that every place is closed on Thanksgiving and Christmas. I might not think to tell somebody that. Yeah, I see that.
I forget all the time, and my team thinks they're working that day, and I'm like, "Oh, you didn't have to work today." I feel terrible. I mean, they tell me now.
I would have paid you.
I mean, they tell me now. They say, "Hey, we're taking today off because it's this," and I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." But which is a kind of a good little thing I like to tell people is let your office manager negotiate with you. Don't command them like a captain on a ship. Let the people who work for you actually negotiate with you on something. So you got to give ground sometimes on things that may be important to them. So just a small little framing tip there is allow there to be room for them to make decisions as well that you respect, not just you expect them to follow 100% of your decisions. As things change, I've been uninvolved in my cleaning company for several years now. I was involved a couple months ago because I do something called a quarterly business health check, where we check each area of our business. If there's one area that's doing badly, like a doctor will go in and fix it. But there was an area of ours that wasn't doing well, so I got involved again, and I feel like a buffoon because I didn't know what I was doing at first, and he was like, and my office manager Justin was telling me I got this, and he kept telling me all the different things that, like, the processes that I wrote out several years ago I'd forgotten about, and he's like, yeah, you did all these great videos for us, you read out these great scripts and everything, and I was going in and like tearing up all the stuff we did and making it worse. So,
Wow.
Nice.
So they were just like, back off, let us, let us do this.
This stuff works really well. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You forgot how awesome you were. Like, oh, wow, I did that. That was really good.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I'd like to tell you that it doesn't get any worse, but I wouldn't be honest if I did. You don't know the half of it, Chris. Just wait.
Yeah.
I've heard No, never mind. I go on too many tangents. I'll stop myself on this one.
Good job, Chris. Good job.
Thanks. Yeah, we're not helping. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's a late night chat. It just kind of veers off. For everyone watching, I do have a document coming summarizing these 3 talks. So you'll be seeing a list of hiring tips and different hiring stages laid out for you as well for some of the stuff we're covering, just a little more in depth. So things like a job description, job application template, where to post it, I'll be including that for you guys as well. So I know we're jumping back and forth here, but you will have kind of an organized unit to go through.
So this is Chris's way of saying, don't worry, you guys. I know Tom and Liz keep pulling us off track, but you'll get the goods. Thank you, Chris. We appreciate that.
I'm just aware my mind is in 3 different places right now. So
yeah, love it.
What I would say, one final thing on that. Here's a good tip that not many people think of that have found us a lot of great office managers and VAs. Where you post it really does matter. And I know this sounds basic. I'm going to tell you specific places, but where you actually post your job posting for a VA makes an enormous quality difference. So Facebook groups is the most popular way now, but it's actually, unfortunately, for whatever reason, the quality is very low. It's people who've never been VAs before, people who've never been office managers, and I believe everyone should have their shot at the career that they want to do, but we're looking for people to lead a team, and you already need experience doing that. So I found Facebook groups to not be a good place to find people who already have that type of experience. What I have found consistently is old net style forums, like from the early 2000s, for virtual assistants. There's virtual assistant specific forums and job boards. Those ones have really quality people there who've been doing this for 5, 10, 15, 20 years as office managers, as executive assistants, as VAs. These are people who have already done everything that you need them to do, often for cleaning or other local businesses before. So going to old style kind of virtual assistant forums is a really great way to find people that you need. Another one is your local chamber of commerce. They have a lot of different service vendors. It depends on your local one, of course, but they often have lists of vendors in different niches. And some of those vendors are people who help other local businesses, and some of them are independent providers. So we found people doing that as well. So you can do things like Craigslist, you can do things like Upwork and Facebook groups, and you will find people, but you have to sift through a lot. So look at, for this niche, for whatever reason, older school methods is actually a really great way to find people.
Where do you find these? Oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
We're asking the same question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, where do you find these older type forums?
Oh, if you just search for, so I stumbled on it by accident because I run a VA company. I was looking for education on VA companies. So I searched virtual assistant forum and a bunch of virtual assistant forums and virtual assistant societies. Like we have a virtual assistant society here in the UK. So things like virtual assistant forum, societies, organizations, associations, those are professional virtual assistants and office managers. Those are the people that you want to seek out to talk to. And you'll find that you may only have to interview 3 or 5 people instead of 30.
Nice. So Google to the rescue again.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen coders talk, they always say Stack Overflow and Google does their job for them. Like they don't have to write code anymore.
Yeah, you lost me. That was like half English, half some other language.
Yeah, never mind, just tangent. I will stop there. But yeah, look for associations and for people who specifically work for that thing. Instead of general groups is the only kind of thing I wanted to say on that.
Okay, that's great. I've never heard anyone say that before. It's a great tip. Yeah.
So there are professional organizations for virtual assistants. That's not surprising, but I never considered it.
I know.
What's surprising is the number of them. There's a lot of them. But for office managers as well. I mean, there's, for example, dentistry, dental office managers is a huge niche. There are tens of thousands specifically of dental office managers, and they're great. If you can snag them, they command a high price, I will tell you. But if you can snag one of them, they are professional. Like dental office managers are like the peak office manager.
Yeah.
So little niches and associations like that will cut the hiring process down 80%.
Awesome.
The only last thing I would say, I'm sorry, I keep adding stuff. What we do, this goes a little bit after finding the person, but you've probably heard, if you've ever read Tim Ferriss, if you've ever read these types of productivity gurus, they say this, and it's a really good one. When you have your top 3 candidates or so, 3 to 5, try them all out for a week. Actually, don't just limit yourself and say, I like this person's personality test, I'm just going to go with them. Actually tell them up front, hey, can we work together for a week and see how you do? And then do that for the top 3 to 5 candidates and give them trial tasks, give them some stressful tasks, throw a lot at them for different areas. And then after a month, you'll actually have a report that you can look at of the top 3 to 5 people and see who you got along with the best and who actually did the work to the quality level that you wanted. So it extends it a little bit because you're adding an extra 3 to 4 weeks to the process, but then you've actually worked with people and you can actually say who is good at what they do. So
there you go, Tom. There's your confidence piece.
Yeah.
Because I know for Tom, he's like, yeah, but I need confidence. Really, got to have that. So there's your piece.
But I like making that investment up front because you're going to get that back on the back end. It's not the setup cost that gets you. It's the value you get after you hire that person and you're working day in and day out.
Yeah, I remember we did it with one person early on, and the end of that day, she sent me a daily report of what we did, and I was so impressed. I was like, I didn't even ask, and you sent me a daily report with minutes. I was like, I love you.
I love you.
Yeah.
You're the winner.
They sold themselves immediately. I was like, all right, this person they're good to go. But that's how you see people shine. Give them actual work. And you see this is a variant on what tech companies do, but it's a lot more ethical. A lot of tech companies will bring you in for an interview and they'll give you a project to do for a few days, but they don't pay you for it, right? And they'll give you like a coding project, and they'll get work out of you. And then they'll see how good quality your code is. They'll see how you tighten it up. They'll see how you worked with their team over a week, and that'll help them decide if they want to bring you on. We've taken that concept, kind of that Tim Ferriss and that software coding concept, and mushed them together and just used it for our own industry.
I love that. And I'm definitely stealing that new term, mushed them together. I got it.
We've got a little more time left, Chris. Do we want to talk about the plugging back in part of this?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So one thing we mentioned 2 weeks ago now was something I've seen in myself, but I've also seen in quite a number of clients over the years is you get a great VA, and because you've been so busy and so burnt out for years as a business owner, it's such a deep relief to have someone do that work for you that it's very easy to go a little bit too far and become emotionally and in terms of time just disengaged from your business. And it's very hard to re-engage. So something that I warn every new client about, and people still do it, but I warn everyone about and have a conversation with them about it, is you need to set up front what is going to be your territory. And you should still have something that's your territory that you do in the business on a daily or weekly basis. For me, it's on a weekly basis. I play with our marketing campaigns, but that's all I do. So that's what I do to keep me engaged in the business a little bit. In terms of the hiring, I'm so disengaged because my manager is just better than me at it. In terms of the phone calls, I'd almost rather miss, I won't, but I'd almost rather miss the call than pick it up, right? So I'm just very disengaged from certain parts of the business. The problem becomes when you become disengaged from every part of your business except the revenue and the profit and the salary that you're getting. That's when you're in a dangerous area where your team starts to feel unappreciated, where there's no one holding your team accountable for the quality of work that they're doing, and where over months, not necessarily over weeks, but over months and years, you're going to start a slow downward trajectory, and you're actually going to find it very hard to come to a place of growth again. So it's all well and good to go remote and travel the world, but if your business is slowly starting to crumble, then you need to fix that, or you're not going to have a business to come back to. So there's a couple ways that I kind of encourage people to get engaged back in their business. It's nothing fancy. It's about as basic as you can get. But that first part, picking an area that you're personally accountable for in your business, is huge. That's number one. Number two is doing something I call a business health check. This is something I walk people through. Essentially, you have kind of a few different areas of your business. You have marketing, sales, you have operations, hiring, and there's a couple others you can add there, like company culture if you want. But essentially, every quarter of your business of the business year, you want to do a business health check, where you look at each of those areas of your business and you see which of them is the weakest link. And then for the next 90 days, you focus exclusively on that weakest link with your time as the owner until it's completely fixed. And then you can move on to the next weakest link. So this is a way that you're always shoring up the weak link in your business quarter to quarter. And after you've done this for 3 or 6 quarters, your business is in such a good, solid place. So number two is having a business health check that you personally do with your teams, and then working on the area that shows up as weakest. And the last one, I'd say, the last kind of one is 2 parts, is you want to revisit your intention for the business long term. Because when you're out of the country or you're disengaged, it can be easy to forget why you started that business. Many of us start it to be a family business, to be a generational thing. Many of us start it to make millions of dollars and do the whole money game. Many of us start it for freedom, but it's revisiting your intention for your business long term is a really important thing to do, because it can start to get you mentally and emotionally back on track and involved in your business again. Because I think all of us check our company bank accounts every day, and it just becomes about the money when that's the only thing you're doing in your business. And I don't mean it in a greedy way, like it's all about the money. It's just you're only seeing the numbers. You're not seeing the people anymore. You're not seeing the clients. You're not seeing the cleaners. So the only thing you have left is numbers on a spreadsheet to look at. And that's not a good place to be. So revisiting your intention is really big. And setting boundaries for work is big too. So something like a minimum that you work on your business a day can help. A lot of us work 10, 12 hours a day. And that's great for a couple of years, but it's not great for 10 or 20 years. So I've done the opposite now, and I'll work a minimum of 30 minutes or an hour a day on my business. And you'll really find something to do if you set that minimum. So if you find yourself not doing anything in your business and not motivated by it anymore, give yourself some homework and do it every day.
It sounds to me a lot like working out. Like, I know I need to work out more often, and just having a minimum is really helpful. So even if I say I'm only going to work out, I only have to work out for 15 minutes. Just the process of getting in there, getting to the gym, getting on a machine and working out, I always go longer. But sometimes it's that first 5 minutes, right? It's like,
that's so true.
So I get that.
So true.
I have to laugh at your minimum there, Chris. Like, I just got to work in my business for a half hour. I just got to make myself do it. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Concept is intriguing. I mean, when you bring it up, I mean, this is a real thing. I mean, this isn't like a black swan event. I'm assuming you've seen this happen on more than one occasion.
I see this happen frequently. Like it's I don't want to say it's a normal progression, but I'd say a third of the business owners that we work with, and I guess this is inadvertently bragging a little bit, we have really good people who work for us. And because of that, the business owners know they can just go away. It's like, in my mind, there's this model, maybe like a pyramid, and you're working your way up to the top where you get to, self-actualization. But really, there's one step above that when you
where you fall off the cliff if you're not careful.
Well, you like fly away.
Yeah. That's perfect.
All right. So, Chris, one of the things that you talk about is the accountability piece, right? How do you make sure that you need to stay engaged so that your people are doing what they're supposed to be doing and you don't just come back and there's no company there because things have fallen through the cracks. So, can you talk a little bit about that? What does that look like?
Sure. I mean, I hate to keep tying back to this, but this really ties back into communication styles as well. They're very closely linked. So one of the big problems I see on the other end, which kind of a third of the owners we work with go through, maybe a little less than a third, maybe a quarter, is micromanaging. When you get someone working remotely for the first time in your team, the other extreme is that you've had your business for 20 years and no one can do it as good as you, even though you've hired this person to do that. And you watch them like a hawk for every little mistake. And they will make a mistake because they can feel you watching them, right? So with accountability, there's a real balance with how you do it. And one of the ways that I say with VAs in particular, is don't use those screen capture softwares. That's common with a lot of VA agencies where they'll capture the VA's screen every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I actually think that sets a very bad precedent. And you're saying to the VA, I don't trust you. I trust you so little that I'm going to take a screenshot of your screen every 2 minutes. I think it's a terrible way to start a relationship with a new person working for you, but it's very common in this industry. And so what I would say with accountability is, where is the point between micromanaging and between being completely passive and uninvolved? And for me, what that looks like is a little simple. And I think for people a little bit more than this would work. But for me, that's two things. My VA will send me an end of day short check-in. That's what I like them to do. Just if there's any issues I need to be aware of, or there's any input they want, they know I'll get to it in the morning before they wake up, just because I'm ahead here. But an end of day report is nice to see, and a weekly meeting for 10 to 15 minutes. It can even be 5 minutes if you have nothing to say to each other. I'll include our meeting template for you guys. Again, it's nothing special, but we have a short meeting template that we use just to keep us on track. And that's the VA's time to, one, tell you all the things that they did that they want feedback on, and two, for you to check in on the important tasks that you gave them and to give them some one-on-one feedback for how they did those tasks. And so accountability doesn't have to be this really severe micromanaging type of thing. It's really just, for us, 80% of it is checking in with them and making sure that they check in with you too and they feel comfortable sharing things with you. And I'd say the other 20% is occasionally, maybe every quarter, just diving in alongside them for a day or two and just observing them and seeing how they're handling tasks. And the reason I say that is twofold. It's to make sure that they're doing the work, but it's also to make sure that they're not getting burnt out. Because a lot of VAs and a lot of office managers are eager to please, and they're very bad at telling you when they're exhausted. And you're only going to know that they're exhausted when their quality of their work starts to drop, when they're not responding to important emails, right? And they're not going to tell you. You're going to have to catch that. And so just having these different check-in points, whether it's daily, weekly, or quarterly, where you're just checking in on them and you're observing their performance a little bit to make sure that they're doing it.
So when you're halfway across, the globe, how do you do that deep dive?
Sure. I don't, but I'll tell you how I'd recommend it.
Okay.
Just the truth. For us, it's the weekly meeting. I do a quarterly review of the business health check that I mentioned with them. But at this point, the people who've been working with my team have been doing it for several years. So I kind of intuitively know when they need to take some time off at this point. And that happens just with any person you work with for a while. You know those little signals. The way I recommend it is just set a date and say, hey, look, we're coming up on your 90-day review. I just want to let you know on December 15th, it's going to be the 90th day. What I like to do is I just like to jump in with you for a day or two. So let's say the 15th and the 16th. And I just want to see how you're responding to our emails. I want to see how you're responding to our leads. And I want to just chat with you and the teams to see if there's anything that we can improve in terms of communication between you two. And just kind of lay out a little game plan with them where you give them little things that you're going to work on together. So don't, you know that, I forget what it's called. There's that show where the CEO of a big company will go in to, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
and they'll pretend to be an
undercover
employee.
boss.
That's it. That's it. Don't do that.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was finished. I was just saying how you phrase the check-in and the deep dive with them is really important. So don't be sneaky or like log into your VoIP and say, hey, there's 20 missed calls this week. What the hell's what's going on? Just take note of things that they're missing and review it with them, and then work on it with them for a day or two. That's it. Just frame it as a game plan and frame it as an improvement type of thing that you do with them regularly.
You've mentioned business health check a few times. How comprehensive is that? Do you like have a standard methodology you use for doing that?
I do. It's a 3-part health check. There's 2 main parts to it. So essentially, there is. How do I explain this briefly?
I got a question for you, Chris, because your terminology is so specific. Is it the Vern Harnish health check?
Never heard of that.
No. Okay. Never mind. Go ahead.
It's just a little how we do it. But essentially, there's 3 parts to it, but there's 2 really main parts that you need to do. The first part is you list the important areas of your business: marketing, sales, operations, hiring, those ones that we covered earlier. And then you rate how you think they're doing on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of those areas. So it's very simple at first. And then you start to write down the things that you could do to improve those areas, right? So what could you do to improve your marketing system over the next 90 days? Or what could you do to improve the value of your upsells over the next 90 days? So that's part 1. It's a really brief thing that you do. Part 2 is what we call a 5x5. And it's a sheet where you have 5 different areas of your business that you need to improve based on the health check. So for example, if your health check came up with sales as your weakest area, you'd have a 5x5 sheet. You'd work on upsell value. You'd work on the number of leads you have. You'd work on your conversion rate, right? You'd work on 5 different areas related to sales. And in each of those 5 areas, you would list 5 actions that you can take to increase that column. And so that's part 2 of the health check is getting very specific about what you can do to fix that weakest area. And then part 3 is actually taking all the data that you've just compiled in your health check and then transmutating it, kind of turning it into a to-do list that you can put into your to-do list with your manager and yourself. That's the brief 30,000-foot overview of it. That probably came out in jumble, but I can talk briefly about that in the document as well. So
I think that's very, very similar to what we do in the MMA groups. So extremely similar. Every quarter, we go through a checklist, find your weakest area, and then we decide on what you're going to work on within that area. Same thing, the different areas, the different tasks that can be done. And then that gets put into your plan, your quarterly plan for when you're going to put it into place. So it sounds very, very similar to what we do in the MMA groups.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly the same.
Except the 5x5, which I like, and now I'm adding. So sorry, y'all in the MMA group. More work. Yeah, I like this a lot.
So we are at the top of the hour.
Criminy crickets, Chris. I feel like every time we talk, it's like this. I'm like, I could listen to you talk for like long periods of time.
This is awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for staying up a little bit late. And I mean, it's all relative, I guess.
And delivering all this stuff. And then, Chris, if there's anything we can do for you, let us know. You've been a huge resource for us. Over the past couple of months here, we'll definitely get the name out. We'll get your word out there and refer you, especially for a lot of really, some of the things I'm going to refer you for is your ability to just be very, very organized and you make things simple, which I think is really, really important in business. Taking out all of the complexity and just making it easier to do business. So
thank you. That's very kind. I would just like to say, I said at the beginning of this kind of talk series, but you two, along with Derek, I really have looked up to you guys since I started. So it's just been great to get on and meet you.
yeah, well, anything we can do, you let us know. We're there for you.
You are a rock star in a lot of ways. Truly, you have a gift, and we appreciate you sharing with us. And I'm certainly hoping that we'll be able to have you back here, before too long, because this is fun.
It is.
And hopefully everything gets together. You get together with your wife at some point in the near future too.
Yeah. I will send you guys a postcard from Tokyo, I hope, very shortly.
Yay, that'd be awesome.
Okay, well, we'll be back tomorrow, 5:00 Eastern, and till then, you guys take care. Again, Chris, thank you so much.
Happy Thanksgiving, Chris.
Bye. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.